welcome to episode 65 of Tomes and Tunes. I am your host, Arielle Silver. I am here in Los Angeles, and we got some rain yesterday. That is big news over here, and also really needed. It's wildfire season again. I hope that this afternoon or whenever you're watching the show, I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you're safe and it's a weird time, this whole COVID thing, when we've got to make, some really thin paintbrush decisions about how we move through the world. It's like, okay, this is going to benefit my spirit, but this is going to put my body in danger. So how can I navigate this? Or this is going to keep my body safe, but I got to get out and see people, see some live music. So how do I navigate that? And I just want to say I am really grateful to, be out there in the world performing live music right now. And this is a conversation that I'm having with a lot of songwriters at the moment. How are you navigating this? So I just want to say to the song-loving, music-loving folks who are maybe not performers and not thinking about it, I just want to say thank you so much for wearing your masks. Thank you for going out to these shows, and thank you also for wearing your masks. I think that there's sort of a both and thing that we got to do right now, and that's just the world that we're in. But I've just been thinking about how important music and stories and being with other humans and being together, how great that is as well. So strange times. And of course, this show, Tomes and Tunes, is one of the silver linings that has come out of this time. It's a conversation with songwriters around the world about books and the creative process, being an artist during COVID times, and all kinds of other things. The show veers into, conversations about practical things. Last week I was talking with Jeremy Hollander, rocket scientist. We were talking about space and study about space and how sometimes you got to look out to get to know your own home better. And we've talked about spiritual things on this show, and just finding out how is everything going in everybody's corner of the world. So this week, for episode 65, I am very excited to bring on Celia Chavez. She is a wonderful songwriter and also a phenomenal vocalist. And speaking of live music, Celia and I played a show together, just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, up in Ojai, California. Beautiful venue. Oh my gosh, the Ojai Underground Exchange. It was such a joy. It was a real gift to be in that space. The sound, the visuals, the audience. It was a listening room where you could really be on stage and share stories and share songs and see all the eyeballs of everybody in the room. It was really beautiful. And Celia and I shared the stage along with Pi Jacobs and Manda Mosher, and it was just a gift of a night. Filled my heart. I'm still running on those fumes a little bit, to be honest. So it's a joy to bring Celia on, and I'm going to go ahead and bring you on right now. Celia, there you are. Hello.
Hi, Arielle.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being my guest today. You and I also played another show a couple weeks before that. You didn't. I don't think you caught my set, but I caught your set. We played the Make Music Topanga Festival.
Yes, we did. No, I didn't catch your set.
And that was, you were singing with Simon as Petty Chavez, which is your duo.
Yes, that was our first public appearance since in front of actual people, I think, publicly. Yeah.
Mine
we
too.
did a couple of sneaky little private things that were super small.
Yeah.
But that was the first one that was publicly advertised since the pandemic started.
That's awesome. I don't think I even, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think I even had any of those sneaky little private things that you're talking about. I think it was literally my first time singing in in 3 dimensions. And I remember standing there under that tent in that parking lot, looking out on the busy street and beyond it, the stores. This was a festival that was just it turned, for those of you who weren't at the festival, it was a festival that turned all of these non-traditional music venues into music venues. So restaurants and retail clothing stores, and our venue was a parking lot outside of a retail clothing store,
Right
and
next to the highway.
yeah, right next to the highway. But I mean, it wasn't quite busking because we weren't like, in the middle of Harvard Square in New York City, but it was like outdoors in that way. But I remember while I was under the tent singing, at some point I just looked up and over and beyond to the mountains that I could see in the distance, and I don't know, I don't even remember what song I was in the middle of, but I remember feeling like, wow, I haven't sung in a space where I could see so far beyond, because I'm
Yes.
used to being right here in my little 10 by 12
Right.
shed, So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I
you
can,
guys
I
sounded
can
great that
relate.
day.
Thanks. Thank you. Yes, I wish I had seen your set, but I mean, man, when you sang it in Ojai, it's just, I really love your voice, and you're
Thank you.
such a good songwriter. I mean,
Thank you.
you obviously work on your craft, and you obviously have read a lot, because you have a good, your lyrics are really evocative and articulate, and
You guys, I brought her on here just to say all these nice things.
it's not true.
You said something though that night on that stage that I wanted to ask you about, and I figured maybe today is a good time to ask you. You said, and I resonated with this because I also did this. You said that you took 10 years off from
Oh,
music.
yes, I did. Yeah.
Can you? I thought that I was the only one when I started to come back to music a couple of years ago and started writing new songs and getting ready to record. I felt like a weirdo. I felt like this is something that nobody does. Like all of the songwriters and musicians that I knew of at the time, I thought they had just been doing it consistently, since they started. And I felt like, wow, I have a lot of catching up to do and all that stuff. And so I started the show, and I've had a few guests on the show say that they also took a break, and
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were one of them as well. Can you
I am one of them.
talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, my story as a musician and as a singer, there's the same thing. That's like the joke about, you tell the joke.
I
There are a bunch
know.
of musicians and then the drummer. No, I am a musician and a singer, and they're the same.
And a drummer.
And a drummer. That's true. My story is that I grew up singing in choir all the way through school, doing musical theater, taking piano lessons, taking voice lessons, studied it in college, and then got into a relationship that was really controlling, and was what I thought I was. I got married really young. I thought it was what I should do at the time, not understanding that I was trying to escape another situation that I was in. And so, part of this, that I think that I understand now a little bit, is that sometimes, when you have a gift, and when you discover the power of that gift, it can be a little scary. I'm just speaking for myself, but I think that's part of what happened with me. And then I got a day job. I got jobs, and I worked. I didn't do any music, and I guess I thought that was the safe and proper thing to do. So like my entire early adult life, 10 years, was working through jobs, and ending up, my last job was before I left Seattle. I'm from Seattle, and was a full-time office job with a salary, and I had the purse and the
Purse.
and then the 4-hour round trip commute, and it was not making me happy, and that thing, when I left my marriage, the first thing I did was go to an open mic. I was encouraged by my friends to kind of rediscover that, and just was really lucky that I had positive experiences from then on, and came back to it. And I think that it is really a misunderstanding that people don't give it up and come back to it. And my experience was that it was always there for me, that it was me that was deciding not to claim it, or that was afraid of it. Who was? I heard you correct your grammar while you were doing the introduction. Now I'm like, I gotta check did that subject follow? Anyway,
This spoken language is so funny, It's like
yeah.
we turn tenses in the middle of sentences all the time.
Yes. So anyway, where was I? No, I digressed.
So
Where was
when
I?
you took that day job, had you been working before you took that day job, before you got the purse? I love that detail. Were you working in music or pursuing music professionally before that happened, or was that sort of right out of music school and then you just ended up on this other track?
Well, I actually did start to try and pursue music professionally. I was just talking to Simon about this because we were listening to a Philip Glass track on Spotify the other day. We were talking about music, and I played him a Philip Glass track from Satyagraha, which is one of his operas, and I was actually in that opera, in the Seattle Opera chorus, right at the end of my schooling, and I got cut because I was sick the day that they announced that they had to cut the number of costumes down because of the budget, and you had to re-audition for your spots. And I was sick that day, so I couldn't sing the soprano. Just like, seriously, I was only sick for a day or two, and that was when they decided to do it. So I got cut from the chorus. And I kind of let myself get talked into the fact that I guess, that this isn't for you. And I don't know. Coulda, shoulda, woulda,
What? Sometimes that story, this isn't for you, is actually, in the long run, it's not. But in the short run, sometimes that story is actually a little easier to deal with, because if it is for you, there's like you and I know now.
There's a whole lot of work.
There's a lot of work ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of work to be done.
Up.
Yeah, showing up. Yeah, showing up for yourself, showing up for others, just showing up in so many ways, and so it is a little bit easier to say, oh, okay, it's not for me. I'm not the top, or I was sick that, just as circumstance would have it, sick that day. I'll take that as evidence that it's not for me.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm grateful for my entire journey. I wouldn't change a thing now, because there are things in those years that I'm not used to StreamYard, so something just popped up on the screen.
Sorry to distract you, Celia. I'll tell you that now that Charlie was just introduced to you, Celia, I'll introduce you to Charlie. He has a podcast called Up Close Acoustic, and he is a wonderful podcast host.
Fabulous. I will check that out.
He just recently interviewed a couple of people who I adore, Dar Williams and Rebecca Lobe. So I was on his show a little while ago.
Oh,
yeah.
Great.
Charlie, you should have Celia on. I think it's about to happen.
We just became Facebook friends, Charlie. Am I right? I think we just recently became Facebook friends.
So to go back though to your story,
I'm like the donkey in Shrek. Just bring me back if I get
So you were sick that day. You sort of took that as a sign, and is that the thing that kind of sent you off on this other track for a little while?
I'd say it was one of the things. Yeah. Maybe, now that we're talking about it, and I'm wondering if it was just like realizing that once I got done with school, I like really had to go after the work. And I had, we all hear things as kids or as young adults that people tell you about what life as a musician will be like if you pursue it professionally. And most of it involves financial insecurity and dying penniless and alone and, all that kind of stuff. And
the starving artist trope is a force. I think it's a really negative, insidious stereotype that actually has real implications for us as young artists before we really fully embark.
Yeah, and so I imagine that was a little bit of I felt a little bit heavy, and this other path was pretty, secure, but not necessarily the right path for me. And it wasn't the right path for me. I was extremely depressed for that decade, and didn't know what was wrong with me. Yeah. And it wasn't until I got back to music that I feel like I really started healing a lot of those feelings.
So you said so it was that open mic that brought you back? Do you remember what you did? What you
Yes,
sang?
I do. It was at a jazz club called Tula's in Seattle. That's now it. I think it went away just before the pandemic. And it was an open mic, and I had charts. You know, I had just came out of music school, so I could write charts, and I was writing a lot of jazzy stuff, and I took the charts down and handed them to the house band, and for the first time, really stood up and sung one of my own songs with a bunch of musicians that were at a different level than I was used to working with. And it was, oh God, I'm getting verklempt. I haven't thought about that in a long time, or like hadn't talked to anyone about it. And there's that thing where you get in front of, you've probably felt this, when you get in front of a band and they're so capable that they can interpret your music on the spot, and you just like, you feel supported, you feel buoyed by the music that they play to support, you know, in support of what you're singing, in support of your song. And that was what happened that night. That's what, you know, and I was like, oh, this is possible. Like, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
And I did. I phased out of my job. I started gigging, and I phased out of my job. I played hooky. I remember the first time I played hooky for my job, thinking that and that was Elvis Costello was playing at a record store doing an in-store, and I just told them I was taking the rest of the day off, and I went down to the record store to see Elvis Costello, and that was about the same time, and that was really inspiring. Oh, hi, Hildy. Hello from Belgium. She's in Belgium, so that's amazing that she's watching your show.
That's awesome. Middle of the night, nightcap time, right?
Yeah, it would be.
So you ended up, so I know you, I think of you as a songwriter, because
Thank you.
I just,
Thank you
I
for
don't know.
thinking of me as a
I just
songwriter.
decided that's how I think of you, but I think that, you know, everybody thinks of us from their own perspective, through their own lens, how they see us. Here comes another plane over Burbank.
Okay. We've accepted this as an imperfect sonic environment.
Yeah, imperfect sonic environment. I love it. So, but I also know that you have had a pretty stellar career as a session vocalist and a touring vocalist. Can you talk a little bit about how, going from that open mic where you wrote those charts, you showed up, you were singing your song, you gave these charts to the band. How did it go from that to Enrique Iglesias?
Okay, that's an interesting question, because I believe I can trace my session singing career back to when I actually was identifying more as a writer, and I joined an organization called the Seattle Composers Alliance, because I thought, oh, maybe it would make more sense, since I've been out of it so long, that if I just like approached it as a writer, and I had gone to a mixer and met all these guys who were like scoring films and doing game music and jingles and that sort of thing. And they had families and they owned houses, and I thought, well, maybe that's kind of the happy medium. And so I went there, and then you know, eventually they found out I could sing, and then I ended up singing on their work in the studio.
Oh, okay.
And I actually ended up getting called to co-write. You know, one of them only wrote long form. They needed a song, like a title song, and lyrics. And so, oh wow, I'm remembering all sorts. See, I don't do a lot of interviews. This is interesting what's coming up.
You know, I think that this is a different kind of interview. I think a lot of, from what I hear from my guests on the show, like for me, it's like the way that a conversation would go.
Yeah.
I think for the interviews
That's cool.
that I've done, a lot of them are like, you know, the interviewer comes in with their set of questions, and it's sort of like, question, here's my answer. Question, here's my answer.
No,
But-
actually, you know what?
but this
I've
is a lot
watched.
more.
Yeah, I've watched a few of these, and the flow of it is really natural and nice, and it just sounds like we're getting to know each other here. I want to hear a little bit more about you, but
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway, I think I answered that question, but I'm
So-
not sure.
So you
because-
started singing. You started singing on those.
Oh, yeah.
On those sessions, and this one particular composer needed a song.
Yeah. So then that happened, and that was in an indie film, and then a friend of mine, one of my best girlfriends in Seattle, who was a jazz singer, she was moving to New York, and I was going to help her move to New York, and she was like, Celia, you really got to come out here because there's so much more of what you are good at that you could get into. Yeah. And she was right. I moved to New York.
That's right. I forgot you lived in New York for a while.
Yeah, and then I just started taking what I was just on Craigslist, and I took any gig.
As a vocalist.
Yeah, as a vocalist.
So so that was sort of a transition from being a writer to a vocalist.
Yeah, but I also went because I wanted to play the in the East Village and play my songs in the little clubs there and stuff.
Yeah.
And, and see what happened. And that happened too. So that was a nice transition and a step for me to take.
I had this experience years ago when I lived in Boston. There was a club there called Johnny D's. I think it's still around. I hope it's still around.
Is it no, wait. Oh, that's in Boston. No. I was like, have I played there?
You might have. It was kind of they had a lot of jazz there. Boston is a great town for jazz and blues and folk singer-songwriters. It's got a lot of that music. And so Johnny D's was sort of one of those venues that sat at the intersection of that kind of music. And I saw some, heroes of mine play that stage. And before my second album, I guess, I had seen too many of my heroes play that stage. I really wanted to play that stage. And then I was signed to a small record label in Boston and recorded my second and third albums on that label. And we had a label showcase, I guess, maybe, or it was something like that, where we that was the first time I played Johnny D's, was for that label showcase. And I remember just the green room really well. It was the first time I had been in the green room, and I remember being on the stage, and then later on down the road, maybe a year later, I was talking to my friend who was the owner of that record label, and I remember us sitting on the front porch of his home, the steps. It was autumn. I can still see the leaves, scuttling along the ground, and it was nighttime. It was a little bit chilly, but not yet winter cold. And I just remember talking to him about how I felt like kind of at a dead end, I think. Just sort of like I didn't know what to do with myself. And he was like, you've played Johnny D's. Like, for a long time, that was a goal that you had. That was something that you really wanted to do, and then you did it. And he's like, now you have to kind of set the next level, like kind of look around, like, where do you want to move from here? You can't just die on that mountain, like, just because you climbed to the top of it, or it wasn't a mountain, but you know what I'm saying. So for you, when you finally were in New York and you played those clubs that you had wanted to play, do you know that, what I'm talking about, like that experience, and if
Yes.
you do know that, how did you kind of
I'm experiencing
move
right
forward?
now, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I don't know if you know that I'm not touring with the Enrique Iglesias band for the first time in 7 years.
I do know that. Yeah.
And I've gone through that period of grief of like,
That's a big thing.
I'm not going to see my tour. I'm laughing because can you guys see my dog right here?
Oh yeah, he's sitting on your shoulder.
I'm
That's so
share.
funny.
I'm bearing my soul here, and you're stealing my thunder. Anyway, but and that was 7 years of a huge international, and I mean 5 continents international tour, in arenas. 20,000 to, I think our biggest show was, oh gosh, 70 something. I can't remember now, but
a lot of people.
A lot. Oh no, actually it was 100,000 at Wembley Stadium during a radio show. So, I mean, big show. Big shows and big. Having to be a big personality on stage. And I'm actually just in the past couple of days, I've been talking to people about what I want to do next, and getting a lot of affirmation about returning to focusing on being an artist, a solo artist, being part of my duo, Petty Chavez, and focusing on the craft, on more than I can when I'm working for someone else, honestly. And I don't know if I'm thinking this would be a much more difficult transition if I hadn't just been home for 16, 18 months.
Yeah.
But I started digging deeper into production, into audio engineering and sound, and getting more curious by the day about that, because it's just so deep that, you know, how that happens, how that's done. And anyway, so now I'm trying to think what your original question was, because I'm having donkey brain again.
Yeah, it's when you climb to the top of that mountain. I mean, that is 100,000 people. I mean, that's
well,
certainly...
and that was a goal for a long time. I was like,
Right.
you know, I would love to go. I literally, the Thanksgiving before the January that I got that job, that touring job, I thought I would really like to be on a summer tour this year. Maybe I can make that happen, or maybe that can happen. And then I got a call to be on this tour for 7 years.
Wow.
You know, and so that was, you know, that was a big goal. And I've always wanted to do something big like that with my singing. And I still have goals for my singing as a singer for other people. But I think that right now, you know, not to say that if someone wanted to call me, you know, that I would say no necessarily on the right tour with the right artist. But, you know, Simon and I are just, this is our big news, is that we're going to open up a new space in a studio outside of our house, outside of our one-bedroom apartment that we've been creating all through the pandemic. And we're expanding with our producer, Greg Johnson, into a space in Santa Monica that has a vocal booth and has a little stage. So we can do all kinds of stuff in there. We can do filming, we can do sessions. I can, you know, we can write, you know, and just create a spot where we don't have to like set my booth up and then take it down before dinner, you know what I mean? And you know, all the stuff that like goes with having your studio in your own home when you don't live in a large space.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that. I've never had a lockout, you know. I've never really needed one, and now it feels like I want this, and I want this space for me and my working partners, and you know. So that's the next step. So the next step is, you know, stepping into being more of a producer and a stronger writer and a more consistent writer, and
I'm so excited for you.
Be available for sessions and stuff. So,
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So it's funny because I'm shrinking. You know, it feels like you know, I'm going from 20,000 seat houses to like the Ojai Underground, which is, like I think I said that night, one of my favorite, maybe my favorite place in California to perform. Yeah. And it looks on the outside smaller, but it feels like such an expansive time right now to shift into different work.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just thinking about how, you know, sometimes people think that expansiveness means going out and bigger, bigger, bigger. You know, the Titanic, the World Trade Center. I don't know why I'm listing all these disaster structures. Sorry. Anyway, the Challenger. Let me just add that one to it. No, but you know, gosh, that was dark. But you know, but we think about these like, you know, that expansiveness in that direction. But then you think about scientists who study on a cellular level and on an atomic level, like going smaller and smaller and smaller, mapping out DNA. And like, you know, there's so much room to expand in the micro, you know, and, you know, expansion doesn't only mean going from a 20,000 seater to a 70,000 seater to a 100,000 seater. It can also mean going inward and writing songs, you know, being an artist and expanding in those directions. Yeah.
Well, being a writer really is, it's kind of like you need to go inside, right?
100%.
You have to, and that is kind of a final frontier for many of us, you know. It's just like what's in there, you know, what's in there, and not even that, but like how open can you be, I guess, when you come and ground and who you are and the sum of your experiences, you know. I mean, how do you explore that? You don't go outside for that. You have to come home for that, you know.
Yeah, you have to kind of go out and live and you know, I don't know, for myself anyway, I feel like I have to have a certain amount of emotional experience out in the world, but the writing process, I think of writers as we live multiple times. You know, people who are not artists might live one time forward in time, or maybe they also have memories, they reflect back. But as writers, we kind of go over and over and over our experiences or our emotional experiences that we set within a, you know, maybe perhaps a fictional frame, but the emotions are true, and we revisit that over and over as in just in the writing process. Forget about the performance process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that takes
Well, you have to write a bunch of, like, there are many songs that writers write that never get
oh
that never
yeah,
get heard by other people, right? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of part of that. You know,
yeah,
you have to do
yeah.
that privately.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. And it's a quantity practice as much as quality, you know. It's like you've just got to do it a lot. You know, I think about, I mean, I've just written so many songs in my life, and you know, bless my friends and family and you know, former audience members. You know, it's like artists are constantly evolving and constantly growing, and we have to have the support in our early days, even if what we're doing is crap. That support is so important, because you have to go through that. You don't suddenly like poof, there you are. I'm a fully formed artist. Like, that's not how artistry works. You know, it's
Right.
this slower, you know, just progression of development.
Yeah.
What? So I'm thinking. I have these two images in my mind right now, and I'm hoping maybe you can. I don't know. Like, okay, so the two images. One is the Ojai Underground Exchange, which I think was a 40 person capacity room. I think 40 to 50, and it was, like you said, and like I said at the beginning of the show, it's beautiful sounding, it's beautiful looking, it's really heartwarming. It's like, I mean, it's a dream. It's a dream come true, really, in
It
a
is
lot
a
of
dream.
ways. And shout out to Bernie if you ever
And
if you're
Cassidy,
watching. Um, but then, you know, then you have on the other side, you have these very large, I mean, internationally known venues that seat thousands upon thousands of people. And you have been on both kinds of stages. I've never been on a stage
Yeah.
that big, so I don't have that experience. What is similar, or what is different? What does that
What
feel
is
like?
similar? What is different? Well, in both cases, I mean, that grounding that we just talked about has to happen. That connection with the audience has to happen, and it does. I think my experience with the big houses is that it's less of like what we saw at the underground, which is that you see your audience, you see their faces, you immediately see their reaction to what you're doing. You can see their expressions. Whereas I feel like in the big house, it's just more of an energy thing, you know.
Oh, right. It's like an invisible thing. It's, yeah, energetic, but
It's not a sight thing, I guess I want to
Right.
say. From my standpoint, I was not the front person in that band. I was a backup singer. And so, but there's a beautiful, what I do, what I've done is, I think early on I realized I couldn't receive visual feedback from people who were so far away and so in the dark, up in the rafters, and, you know, whatever. You can see some people, but it really was about me opening up. I have to approach it differently when I'm singing with someone else, because they're not necessarily there to see me. They're not probably there to see me.
Right.
They're there to see the artist. And so I actually feel like what I do is open up. I just try to create an open path to, well, it's kind of like,
channeling.
so like, this is getting woo-woo here.
Right. I feel like that woo-woo part, though, is, I mean,
It's kind
there's
of part of
me
what
that
I
wants
do.
to. There's part of me that wants to reject it, but a part of me that has realized that that is an absolutely necessary part of being an artist. So go ahead.
Well,
So what
okay,
is it
so
that you-
I have like a grounding thing that I need to do, and I physically do things. I'm not going to do them on camera, but I do mean, you know, I go through kind of like ritual movement where I ground myself to the earth, and then I draw up energy from whatever it is that I believe fuels me and my creative energy. And then I also kind of become like an antenna or like a dish, just to receive what the audience wants to give me, and then
so a dish to receive, not like a satellite dish that is broadcasting out, but
exactly.
a receptacle.
Which seems counterintuitive when you're supposed to. They always, they tell you have to project big, and yeah, you do. But I feel like I'm 5'1", and I'm not a big person, and so, I can do this as much as I want, but I'm not physically going to be able to touch or be visual enough for people in that big of a house. So, so I just basically try to create this energy loop, I guess, between me and grounding and the audience. And, obviously, as a performer, you need to prepare. So that's necessary, so you don't have to think about what you're performing. And then it just becomes like, I don't know, I'm getting so woo-woo. It's like, but it becomes like a dance with the audience, right? It's like an energetic dance with the audience, an energetic dance with the artist. And and whatever's in me that I have to express. So anyway, I don't know if that made sense, but
you're making me wonder. So you talked about those early days, the open mic. You moved to New York. You were writing music, then you were singing on sessions and all that stuff. And then there's this big leap that we made. All of a sudden, now you're playing these giant stadiums. Mm-hmm. What was the first experience, the first time that happened, that you were playing for an audience where you couldn't actually, it wasn't one of those small East Village clubs. It was a big venue where, what was that? What was that like? How did you prepare for that first time? Do you remember what the first time was?
It was in Puerto Rico. It was it would have been probably, well, let me think. Those were the largest. I mean, I'd sung in theaters before, but this was
so you
the
already
first time where there were people I could absolutely not see. Yeah. And that would have been in Puerto Rico in 2014 in March when I did my first gig with Enrique. And I just remember it being joyous. I just remember being,
Love that.
The little girl in me that used to sing with her hairbrush in front of the mirror was just like, heck yeah. This is cool. I actually remember I did something really funny, which was that the guys in the band had said never ever, they have the thrust that goes out like a runway from the stage, and they're like, don't go on that. That's his space, right? Don't go on that. And then halfway through the show, I saw he went like this. He went like this to me, and I was like, okay. So I took that solo line and I walked right out and I was just like, yeah, I'm on the freaking catwalk, guys. And then after that, he pulls me aside. He's like, I didn't mean for you to come out on, he was like, don't ever do that again. So I kind of voila, I have arrived. And and I also learned the rules. But it was really joyous. And the guys in the band were super supportive, and it was really fun. It was awesome. It's awesome to do that.
It sounds like the transition from the smaller venues to the larger one was just like, it just felt really, I have this A Star Is Born, all of a sudden Lady Gaga is on that, at the Greek or wherever it is that she is in that movie. It's like singing in the parking lot and then all of a sudden in this big venue.
I mean, it's funny because
awesome.
I'm still a dorky music fan, you know what I mean? And I was watching, Simon and I were watching A Star Is Born, speaking of Lady Gaga, and all the stuff that they show from the perspective of the stage, and then when they have her, and it's so funny because it's Lady Gaga, and she never is on the side of the stage, when she comes on and she's like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like, and she's so wide-eyed, and you see she's got her pass, and I mean, I still have that, and I never want to lose that. And I'm realizing that when the next time I see that show, it's going to be from the audience, and I'm going to be like, I know how this stuff works now. It's like a different kind of thing.
I'd be crying. If I had been up there touring with him, and then the next time I was watching the show from the audience, oh my gosh, I can imagine that will be an emotional experience to see it from that point of view.
Yeah, it probably will be.
Well, okay, Celia. This is a show called Tomes and Tunes, so I have to ask you, what have you been reading?
Well, as I showed you in the sound check, I've got a few things. No, it's funny because I do read. Oops, I do. I'm like, I tend to start a few books and then read them, alternate between books.
Yeah.
And I actually just got done reading. My friend Anita Kopash just released this book called Shallow Waters a few weeks ago, and I just got done reading it. And it's a mermaid story. It's The Little Mermaid, but through an African diaspora lens, and through the lens of American history. So it's really cool. It's really cool. It's a great story.
Do you know? Does it say in the story what waters the Little Mermaid character is swimming in? If it's
Are you talking about in this book?
Yeah. Where does it take place?
It takes place. It starts in coastal village, in a fishing village in Africa. Well, actually, no. It starts. I'll read what I want to read later is the prologue, because I don't want to give away too much about the story. Because each chapter is like magical and like, oh, I can't believe that happened. So I feel like if I read anything except the prologue, I'm gonna be a spoiler. But yeah, it takes place. It starts in Africa, and then it follows the path, the Trail of Tears, from Africa, across the Atlantic, and into the United States, in the path that slaves took, when they were taken. So it's a little more adult than The Little Mermaid. But,
The Little Mermaid, the original, is dark.
Yeah.
I mean, the original.
Oh, the original,
story, the original fairy tale is dark. Yeah.
Most folk tales are really dark.
Yeah, they are.
In the very, very beginning. Yeah, Cinderella is really, really gory, actually.
Yeah, I've read a lot of
And Sleeping
Cinderella.
Beauty.
Yeah. So is the protagonist, is the Little Mermaid character in this book? Is she? Does most of the book take place in the water, or is she on a boat? Is she on land?
She's all of those things, and I don't want
She's
to
all
say
of it.
when.
Wow.
When she's not on a boat.
Okay.
Technically, but she is in water and she is on land. She has transformations, and it's really, really cool. I can't say too much about it.
Read us the prologue.
Okay.
Yeah. Or
Yes,
part of it,
I
or
feel
whatever
like
you
I'm
have.
gonna
Yeah.
say something. I'm averse at keeping secrets.
It sounds like it's a bit magical realism. Is that?
It's magical realism. It's totally magical
okay.
realism. And it's also an empowerment story.
Okay.
So I like that about it too. It's all kinds of good things. Okay, so let's see. Can I show the? No, it's going to be too hard for me to do that. So I'm reading on an iPad just because, and I'm wearing my reading glasses. So
They're wonderful.
I love that you picked my glamour shot for the promo on the promo flyer for this, because I'm like, you're all like, I'm cool and I'm reading books, and I'm like, hey.
I love that shot of you, because your curly hair is crazy, and we were talking about having curly hair at,
That's
when we were
right.
in the green room before this. So yeah,
Yes.
I love that shot.
We are curly sisters, me and her. Yes. All right, which is funny because Arielle is the name of the Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So here's the prologue. A long grunt escapes my lips. My body is numb. I cough up the last gulp of water I had taken in and held before I passed out. As I sluggishly blink my eyes, one thought repeats in my mind. I have to break through as soon as possible. I didn't need to breathe during the transformation, but now my need for air is urgent. My nerves awaken from the inside out. I can feel the change in my body. Everything is different. My eyes are dry. I blink a few more times in the darkness, working to clear away the crust that has formed over my lashes. Slowly, I become aware of a dim light penetrating the shell of my cocoon. The sun's rays reveal a complex webbing within the shell's walls, strong enough to withstand the ocean's waves. My body stirs, and I can feel the shrunken cocoon chafing against my skin. I pull away from the rough interior. Something's wrong. I'm lying on my back, and I can feel that the pod is still, it's no longer bobbing along the ocean's surface. I have to get out now. I push with every molecule of my body, but it's no use. The shell is as hard as rock. I fumble in the darkness, trying to find the last section of the cocoon that I had sealed, in hopes that it might be a bit softer. My fingers meet at the top of the pod, and I use my thumbnail to puncture a small hole. A bright beam of sunlight streams in and momentarily blinds me. As I had suspected, there is no water. I begin to panic. Where am I? I need the ocean's pressure to help me break through the shell. I frantically chip away at the small hole and attempt to push one of my newly developed legs out. The sensation of being able to move my lower limbs independently throws me off balance. They flail weakly as I try to maneuver them over my body to thrust them up and out. Although I've watched humans walk and dance and kick, I don't know how to use these new limbs on my own. I grip the backs of my smooth thighs with my hands and pull my knees toward my chest. It's so strange to feel skin and not scales, to have no control over what was once my powerful finned tail. I position my feet against the top of the cocoon and kick the damaged shell with all my strength. The debris shatters away from my body. Stunned by the bright sunlight again, I clamp my eyes shut and roll over. I strain to push myself up and wobble as I attempt to stand steady. For the first time in my life, I am vertical, held upright by 2 feet. I squint through tears, and I'm terrified to see that I'm surrounded by a pack of them, humans who I do not recognize. They don't look like the ones from my home, but I am somewhat relieved to see that they do not look like the pirates either. I am completely exposed. My body trembles so violently, I'm afraid I will collapse.
Thank you.
So it's trippy because, we never get to be inside the Little Mermaid's brain.
Yeah.
No, she's not the Little Mermaid. Her name is Yemaya.
Yemaya?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never thought about that transition before.
Yeah, me neither.
But that's interesting because we've been talking this whole show about transitions. And that's kind of an interesting idea as you were describing her tail versus her legs, and she doesn't know how to use them yet. And I was just thinking about all the things that we've talked about so far in this show.
True.
Wow.
Ooh, funny how that worked out.
I know. Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Very
You're
intriguing.
welcome. I'm happy to share that.
What's the name of it again?
It's Shallow Waters.
Shallow. Oh, and here we were talking about A Star Is Born, which has that song, of course.
Oh,
yeah. So Shallow Waters, and I'm putting it in the chat. What is the author's name?
It's Anita. Can I put stuff in the chat? No. Anita, Anita.
Yeah.
And her last name is capital K-O-P. Oops, I'm going to just make sure. She's Black and Polish, so I'm just going to make sure I spell the Polish part right. K-O-P-A-C-Z.
A-C-Z.
Yes. Oh, here's the cup. Can you see this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that
That's
looks really nice
this
on
way.
an iPad.
Oh, I'm just getting reflection.
Yeah. There we go. I
Yes,
just put it
that's
in the chat box, so
Yeah.
for anybody who wants to look at that. I'm reading in book form Natasha Dayon's book Grace, and this takes place. The protagonist is dead for most of the, or for her narration, and she has escaped slavery, American enslaved person, and she has at the moment landed in a brothel, which is another form of slavery, and I've had this book on my shelf for some time now, and finally, after a year of reading a lot of Toni Morrison, I see, like, now I pulled this off, and I feel like I see, I don't know, some connections there that I don't think I would have gotten had I read this earlier. So it's good timing. I just started this book though, so as I was saying to you, I don't have a great excerpt to share on this show yet. And simultaneously, I frequently, because I tend to walk a lot, a lot of times, sometimes I'm listening to podcasts, sometimes I'm talking to friends or family or having business meetings while I'm out for a walk. But a lot of times also I'm listening to audiobooks. And I just finished Alexander Chee's book, Edinburgh. I'll put that in the chat as well. Alexander Chee, Edin. There we go. Yeah. Thank you. This book is it's a novel, but he calls it an autobiographical novel. Very strongly based on his own experience. It's a story about the legacy of childhood abuse, and also a story about it's been called like I just saw this phrase the other day. It was like a contemporary great American novel or something like that, but also kind of great American gay novel. It's about him, in part about him coming of age and grappling both with his childhood abuse, sexual abuse at the hands of a man, and trying to understand, wait, he is gay, and that's not the same thing, because it was muddled for him when he was a young boy, trying to parse this out. And then also it's about being biracial, having a Scottish American mother and a Korean American father. And so it has some folktale, some Korean folktale, and also some Japanese folktale in there as well. So it's a
wow.
All
Very
of this
cool.
aside, also part of, and I'll read the part from the beginning of it, but music plays a really big role in this book as well. And it's really beautiful the way that he talks about music over the course of the story. And also the character who is a singer when he's young, he becomes a visual artist when he's older. And so there's a lot of color themes as well, and fire. So it's gorgeously written. I'm just going to read this little bit. This is from the first chapter. I auditioned for the Pine State Boys Chorus on an afternoon at the end of November in the year I am 12 years old. The audition, I recall, is my own idea. In a gray stone cathedral's practice room somewhere near Longfellow Square in Portland, Maine, I sing for a square-headed, owlish man, a series of scales that he plucks out on the piano, his pink fingers playful over the black and white keys. It's good, he says. Your voice. You've got a terrific range. On a clipboard next to him, a list of names. Some have been checked off. The afternoon sunlight in the room lights stained glass windows of Bible scenes I can't recognize due to inattentiveness in church. The light casts them as brilliant colors on the bare wall opposite me. When I sing, I feel that I am like the wall is now. This is why I have come. Do you know any songs? He asks. He looks down toward me as if I might run from the room. Christmas songs, I say. He unfolds some music and hands it to me. I sing Silent Night. Oh, come, let us adore him. Angels we have heard on high. That one's my favorite, I say, when I'm done. I've never heard my voice alone with a piano before. The quiet that follows when I stop singing seems new, too. Rhythm, too, he says. My science class has taught me that breathing turns the air inside you into a carbon, a little different from smoke, but a little like it. We have this in common with flames. We are just slower. I take a breath, waiting, impatient. I am looking for boys just like you, he says finally, and checks my name off the list. I leave with the folder of sheet music for the first rehearsal, given a seat in the choir right away. In the car on the way home, I can't wait to start. I remember the director's odd, soft handshake. I'm Eric, he'd said. But there's another Eric in the choir, so I am Big Eric, and he's the little one. Did you hear me? My mother says right then, as she drives through the early evening traffic on the bridge between Portland and Cape Elizabeth. No, I tell her. I didn't. And here I'm going to skip a little section, but I want to get this part here. I meet Peter in the first rehearsal I attend. The other boys and I do not talk to each other beforehand, but we set our voices side by side as if it were no matter at all. In this practice chapel, the 20 of us sit in metal chairs that ring as we sing through the first part of an early December night. Some boys I recognize from my town, the others are unfamiliar. The one beside me looks up at me now and then as we sing, making little faces. His white blonde hair is like candle flame. Almost all of these boys are blonde, which is to say I am the one who isn't. Boys, Big Eric, the director says, please say hello to our newest members, Aphias G. Peter O'Hanlon. And at his name, the blonde boy next to me looks up at me and says, "You're new too?" "Are you Chinese?" another boy asks. "No," I say, "Korean. Half." Saying it always makes me feel split down the middle, like a cow diagrammed for her sides of beef. "I'm part Indian," Peter offers. The rehearsal continues. At the end, we wait on the curb for our parents to come and pick us up. "Do you want some?" Peter says, and holds out a can of chewing tobacco. "No thanks," I say. He burps red spit into the street. "Come over and ride bikes," he says. "Okay," I say. And I'll just leave it at that.
Wow. The little choir scene. I love that.
Yeah. I really loved the audio narration of this book, but also I'm pretty sure I'm going to read it on the page as well. As I was saying to you before, I love language, and I like, when sentences are just beautifully written, I tend to be a really slow reader. I don't really read as much for plot as I do for language. I feel like this particular book, and Alexander Chee as a writer, there's so much insight that comes just in the way that he turns phrases over, in different ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do like the language in that passage.
Yeah.
And the dialogue, the way the dialogue feels. Nice.
Yeah.
Great choice.
And so the other part of this show is, of course, tunes.
The tunes. Oh, yeah.
And I'm excited for this part because I love listening to you. So what are you going to play for us? Have
Well,
you decided?
know what? I played it in the sound check, and you said you noticed the first line.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, now I got to do that for Arielle because.
Yay.
This is on. You've had Pi Jacobs on this show, right?
I have, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So she produced.
Oh, she produced this one.
She produced a record of mine called White Flag, Blue Sky, and this is on that. And now that it's so funny. Now that I'm doing it, this is also about transition. This song, I think it'll be self-explanatory. I think when I do the song, so I'll just play it.
Yeah.
It's called "She Understands These Things." Now my palms are cemented. Isn't that funny? Like we were just talking about like doing big houses, and I'm playing just, it looks like to you, and my palms are sweating.
Thank you for telling me that. Yeah, okay. We'll talk about all that another time, but thank you for telling me that. Happens to me every week.
Great. I'm not alone. She fills the open boxes with 30-odd years, when the children in celebration have all disappeared. And she knows that silence sometimes is what forward motion brings. Oh, she understands these things. She gets cards from all the neighbors and flowers from the girls, when the cardboard and the cellophane are all that's left of her world. Though she lost a dream some time ago, she can still feel their sting. Oh, she understands these things. But how could two together take that kind of blame? She wonders if forever is too long to share a name. truck is outside waiting, and she doesn't hesitate. She closes up the boxes and she opens up to fate. And she knows she'll fly a straight line when she pulls her own strings. Oh, she understands these things. But how could two together take that kind of blame? She wonders if forever is too long to share a name. But the truck is outside waiting, and she doesn't hesitate. So she closes up the boxes and she opens up to fate. And she knows she'll fly a straight line when she pulls her own strings. Oh, she understands these. Oh gosh. Oh no, I forgot the ending. Hold on one second. Oh man, this happens to me. This happened to me at the Ojai Underground as well, where I just like got to the end of the song and I realized that I forgot it. Oh. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Understands the. Wow, this is really embarrassing. It just ends with a repeat of the chorus. That's so lame.
When in doubt, the tonic.
Well, if anyone wants to hear the song in its entirety, it is on all streaming platforms, and it's called "She Understands These Things." And I will go practice the end of this song after we get off the call.
I would say at least, I was thinking earlier today, about 50% of the time, if not more, on this show, I goof up the song that I'm playing. Because it's like you're having a conversation first and you're talking about so many things, and then you get to the song portion and it's like, oh yeah, like I hadn't, it's sort of like shifting gears.
Yeah, no, that's true. I guess
so. Yeah.
Well, plus I had two song options depending on how our
yeah.
conversation went, and I'm realizing now that I possibly may not have run this song before. But you know what? It's funny because we were talking in the sound check about perfection, and then it's like I've just decided I'm just gonna laugh at myself every time I screw up, because the alternative is beating myself up, and that's just not productive. So.
And you know, also, you and I are both sort of, I guess you could say, like educated musicians, like schooled musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an epiphany. I mean, I've had a lifelong grappling with stage fright and sort of dealing with that and working through it and trying to understand it and get to the root of it and get beyond it and, you know, just like look at it from all the directions and dissolve it and, you know, all the things. And I had a realization a couple of weeks ago that just felt like a landmark moment, which is that this is about the song. Right? It's not about, for me, I was a classical clarinet player, and
right, that's right.
Yeah, and I went to, you know, I studied it through college, and I went to music school on a scholarship for clarinet, and I still, to this day, you know, have that idea that there's some kind of ideal that I will never achieve. And I had this understanding that, wait a second, that's not what hits people's hearts. Like, that, it's not that. It's the song. And that song that you just played, I love it. I love it. And much. I can relate to it. I understand it. I love that line about forever, too long to share a name. It's a great rhyme, but also a really powerful line. So, yeah, thank you for playing that.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
And you know, I just screwed up the tag, so it was
I know.
Repeat.
And that's a funny thing too, because you know, sometimes when I'm thinking about a song, sometimes I'm getting ready to play it and I forget to run the ending. Like I forget that something changes at the end. So
thanks, Hildy.
Got some really nice comments up here. And the Burbank airplane is going overhead too.
Oh, thanks, Charlie. Yes, we can certainly arrange that. And thanks, honey. My partner Simon is chiming in.
There we go. We'll put Simon up one more. Simon gets
Thanks, Simon.
two times.
Oh, he's on next week, right?
Simon is my guest next week, and that's pretty cool because you guys are in, obviously, this duo together, Petty Chavez.
Yes.
And so I wanted to get you both back to back. You know, and I don't know, there's something, it's like you're still together as the duo, but there's just a 7 days in between, which is kind of funny. Yeah. I'm going to play this song,
yes,
Celia.
I was going to say, what about your song?
This is a song that I just pulled out. Again, I wrote it at the beginning of 2020, before COVID, and then, or before it really, I mean, not before COVID existed in the world, but before it existed in my world. And I haven't played it in a long time because now I've written a bunch of songs between then and now, but I just pulled it out this week. And so I'm going to try to play it. And it seems thematically, you and I are kind of on the same page today. Put my reverb on. Thematically, it goes with the song that you just played. So we'll see how this one goes. There we go. And this is a song called, so in your song, she's packing up the boxes. This song takes place a little bit after that. Maybe, you know, who knows? Everybody has a different amount of time, but it takes place a little bit after that. Blink your eyes at the yellow stripe of sunrise through the curtain. When you stretch your limbs and your necks across the bed. When you rise without alarm clocks ringing, catch yourself in the kitchen singing, put daffodils and water on the shelf. Doing fine by yourself. When you dust the bike and pump the tires, throw an apple in your bag. When you pedal down some streets you never knew. When you notice how the season's turning, notice how your heart's not yearning. In fact, you're feeling rather well. Ooh, you're doing fine by yourself. Funny how you thought world would end. Strange to find instead that when the day is done and you're back at home with a jelly jar of wine, when you're curled up on the sofa with a book, you realize that for all your fears there's a tenderness you're finding here. And on the flip side, a farewell. You thought you'd never live to tell. Doing fine by yourself. You're doing fine by yourself. You're doing fine by yourself.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Oh. Simon told me about this thing about. Have you ever heard this about the furniture in the song? Like the
Yeah.
You have nice furniture.
Oh, thank you.
I love that.
And it's not just because my character is curled up on the sofa with a book.
No.
Yeah, that term. I love that term too. I feel like it's a particularly Nashville term. And Simon, did he ever live in Nashville? I guess I'll hear the story from him.
You'll get the story. No, I don't think he did.
But he was a staff songwriter. And so, right?
I don't think he's ever a staff songwriter. I mean, he can illuminate this topic next week, but I don't believe so. He's.
I think I'm putting that term in.
Deal and all that.
Exactly. That's what I'm meaning. And I feel like it's like that's what people call it. It's like, oh yeah, all the furniture, like the nouns.
Scenery.
Yeah.
It's so visual. That's what I remember from when we were on stage together. Is that I just got like transported. Every time you started a song, I was like transported to the place and.
Thank you.
See the characters is so good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Gosh, I can't wait to talk with you more about all of this stuff that we just started talking about today.
Let's just have some coffee.
Coffee would be fabulous. And is your space done yet, or
no, we're
not yet?
We're moving in at the end of the month, but come by and see it. And
I'll bring you some lavender for my garden as a housewarming.
Great. We love lavender.
And I'll wear a
Simon
mask too.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds great.
What times?
Yeah.
Celia, before you go, where can people find you? And also, do you have a show upcoming that you want to talk about?
Well, we're playing Simon and I as a duo. I'm not playing solo, but as 50% of an acoustic duo. We're playing at the Underground on September 4th. I should know that. It's a Saturday.
Nice. At the Ohio Underground Exchange?
Yes.
On September 4th?
Mm-hmm. And even if you're not in Southern or in California, it will be webcast also. It will be on the web as a live stream. And you'll have access to it afterwards with your ticket.
Yeah, for a while.
For a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah.
So you can watch it at your leisure and still donate to the artists and the venue. That's a great venue. They do a very fair payout with the artists. And so we like to support them as well. And they're just good people. Cassidy and Bernie are good people.
Very good people. And I also... I played another venue that had a hybrid show where, live stream as well. And it was only available when the show was actually happening. It was a live broadcast during a live show, and there was no catch up on it later. And we had already done the Ojai one a few weeks earlier, and I was thinking, that's really great for the European folks.
Yeah.
They can catch... they don't have to catch the show at whatever hour in the morning, that they might be, in the middle of sleeping or maybe getting up to go to work. It's like they can catch it the next day at a more reasonable viewing hour.
Yeah, that's helped us a lot because we actually, we got a bit tighter with our overseas fans during the pandemic. Because we could we were doing shows at like noon on Saturdays, so that they could tune in. And
that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's been really, really fun to be able to do that.
So you have I saw that you're on Spotify yourself under Celia Chavez, but you're also under
and Apple Music and whatever else.
And so Petty Chavez, people should follow you in all of those places, both under your name and under Petty Chavez, the duo name, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm at celiachavez.com is my website, so pretty easy to find if you can spell my name properly. And you don't have to pronounce it, which is good. I was laughing. Arielle, thank you for joining me with the captioning, the pronunciation captioning. I think it's
the sisterhood of odd names. Celia and Arielle. Great. So that's one thing that I've been trying to get better at, is remembering that part of our job as performers is to help music fans and supporters of music know how they can do what they want to do, which is support us. A lot of times I think that we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and you know, in today's barrage of information, I mean, talk about information superhighway, which is what they called it back in the 90s when the web was first coming up, right? But it's like just a constant barrage. And I think that a lot of music fans and supporters just simply don't know how to support us. And so I'm trying to get a lot better at saying, you know, follow Celia Chavez and Petty Chavez on all of whatever your favorite music listening platform is. If it's Spotify, if it's Apple, if it's Amazon, YouTube, subscribe to your channel.
Well, and you can buy, I mean, I don't know, do you have stuff up on Bandcamp, Arielle?
I do. Yeah.
So
and I know that some people want, I mean, that's an interesting conversation, because I think that there are music fans who really want to own a CD. So I have CDs that they can buy. I have music fans who really don't want a CD, but they really want to download the tracks onto their hard drive, or they keep it on their own, you know, in their own library, you know, organization. So great. So, you know, we've got our tracks, you know, up on Bandcamp and, you know, places, iTunes, where you can buy the download. But I think that, you know, for those people who don't listen to music on CD, for those people who don't want to download tracks, who just want to stream it, and I have to admit, I've become a Spotify user primarily. I don't even have a CD drive in my computer anymore. So it's like I buy the CDs. Yeah, I have one in the car because I have an old car, you know. But you know, when a friend comes out with a CD, sometimes I buy the CD mostly because I want the liner notes, or I just want to look at the artwork. And so when I put out my album last summer, 1,000 Tiny Torches, I made a separate companion book that has all the liner, like all of the juicy, I mean, even more than I would be able to put in an album, so that if people don't listen to CD, but they really want, you know, all of that juicy stuff that's like original artwork and essays and stories and credits, they can buy the book separately. You know, I feel like if someone just streams music, I want them to, you know, like you and follow you and like all your songs and add them to the playlist, and I want them to do the same with my songs. And then if, you know, the money that they spend, they can buy a mug or a shirt or a book or a journal, or, you know, whatever the other merchandise, or just put some money in the tip jar. Or do you guys have a Patreon? Have you done that?
No, working on that. That's part of what we're going to do in the new space, is like make a lot of content.
Yeah.
Just shoot things.
And Patreon is an amazing thing, because it's like, you know, that I'm kind of like doing a lot of my now I'm kind of sharing more in depth with my patrons on Patreon than I am anywhere else. My mailing list, I love my mailing list, and I share stories with my mailing list. But with the Patreon, that's where I can, you know, kind of dive a little bit deeper into longer form background of stories or background of songs and stuff.
Well, that's, you know, I am attracted. I've been researching it further. At first I thought, oh my gosh, I have to make so much stuff. And like, I've done crowdfunding, and I found out afterwards, like, it's a lot of work afterwards.
It is a lot of work,
and gratefully I did it, you know, but it took a lot of time, and it was, and I feel like, you know, when we post stuff on social media, we're kind of like throwing stuff out into the void.
Yeah, and at the whim of the algorithm that may or may not favor us.
Right, and like something like Patreon, you always are going to have core people who are interested in getting your updates and interested in hearing the newest song or seeing your newest, you know, and like, put them over here, let them know where to let them know that they can just support you here, and then you will give them all the stuff they want, you know. And get to know them, because it's going to be a smaller number than the 4,000 followers or whatever, you know, that I have on Instagram, that I don't even know how much engagement I have on there. Like,
and those folks are great too, you know, like,
they're great
too.
You
know, follow us everywhere, but it's like different levels. It's like the stratification, like different levels of how much people want to support you, really, or engage with you, or, you know, learn about you. I have a fan who, you know, was awesome, was, you know, at my live streams every week last year when I was doing them weekly, not this show, but like the music live stream. And, you know, like a dedicated attendee at those, but hasn't become a patron. And I've kind of, you know, thought about that a little bit, like, oh, you know, at $3 a month, you can help offset the cost of I have a microphone here and all the equipment, a PA system, a camera, the lights behind me, not to mention the time, like the time that we spend doing these kinds of things, which, at some point, we make decisions like, okay, well, this is a moment where I need to take a paying gig, and this is a moment where I'm going to offer content for free, but if you want to support it at $3 or $10 a month or whatever it is, that really helps to keep providing this kind of content.
Right.
Like this show, for example.
Which is great. This is an
Yeah.
amazing conversation you have with artists. I just love the format. And I think most of us, are book and song people, so it's like easy to have the conversation.
It's awesome. It's so great. And so I'll let you go, but Celia, it's been awesome talking with you, and I can't wait to hear Simon's side of his story, even though it's, of course, this was your story that has, a little bit maybe to do with him, but it's your, like, the spotlight's on you. Next week the spotlight's going to be on Simon, and that's pretty cool to get sort of both pieces of this duo. You guys are awesome.
He's an interesting character, and he has lived an interesting life, and he's a beautiful songwriter, so I'm really excited that you guys get to have
with a beautiful accent, which I will try to understand most of. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you next week. Celia, I will say goodbye to you in the green room. Thank you for being here. And for those of you tuning in, thank you so much for being here. Tomes and Tunes happens every week at the same time, live. And, of course, you can catch the replays. I always have the archives of them on my website, ArielleSilvermusic.com. You can get to it from that link tree that's been scrolling on the bottom there. And also it's on my YouTube channel. And there's a specific playlist specifically for Tomes and Tunes. And hopefully my guests share their episode as well. But if you want to see the whole body of work, if you want to catch some of the other episodes, you can find them there. And I am playing, for those of you who are local to Los Angeles, I'm playing this Saturday in Monrovia at Wing Walker, that's hard to say, Wing Walker Brewery. I love the name of it, even though it's hard to say. It reminds me of Fluvog shoes, and, gotta love those boots. Anyway, but Wing Walker Brewery and Tap Room in Monrovia on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. And next week, as mentioned, we got Simon Petty on the show, so I will see you then. And Central Coast up in Paso Robles and Pismo, I'm coming to you next weekend. So, folks, please be on my mailing list so that I can let you know when I'll be in your neck of the woods, starting to book out of California as well for 2022. So I want to stay in touch. I'll see you next week. Please get vaccinated, mask up, be safe, keep your distance, but love those people that you love, and come out to live music, support that. Okay. Take care.